Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a presentation that's going to look at the Nazis' persecution of the Jewish community in Nazi Germany and the territories it occupied. I have a number of presentations planned dealing with this awful episode in history, including the Nazis' treatment of other minorities. It doesn't make for pleasant listening, but it is so important. Now, before focusing on Nazi beliefs, it's important to understand that anti-Semitism was rife throughout Europe, though particularly in Eastern Europe, where Jews were found in greater numbers. Jews were seen as alien wherever they settled. They don't belong here. And that had always been the root of anti-Semitism. And indeed, Jews had experienced discrimination on this basis for hundreds and hundreds of years, with many brutal pogroms, that's violent actions, enacted against them all over Europe, all because they were seen as alien. But let's look at the Nazi theory on race matters. The Nazis believed there was a hierarchy of races, and that Aryans were the most superior race, the master race. They were superior in terms of intelligence, physique, morals, and work ethic. What's more, the Nazis believed that history was a matter of racial struggle, and to win that struggle, racial purity was essential. The race had to be kept strong, or else it would be weakened. Racial purity, then, was the reason for persecuting Jews and Gypsies, and those with physical, mental, or social defects. Jews were weakening the Aryan race by marrying Aryans and having children with them. But also those with what the Nazis deemed to be hereditary weaknesses, physical, mental, or social defects, had to be prevented from having children too. But why was the Jewish community particularly and so viciously targeted? The Jews were also blamed for Germany's defeat in World War I, and they were central to the stab-in-the-back myth. They were also prominent in the German Revolution. Yet whilst the Nazis associated the Jews with communism, they also felt that the Jews were trying to control the capitalist world. Jews were also successful in business and the professions, and were influential in the arts. This challenged their racial ideology, and so couldn't be allowed. Hitler and the Nazis came to use the Jews as scapegoats for all of Germany's misfortunes. The stab in the back and defeat in World War I, the hyperinflation in 1923, and the Great Depression that started in 1929. On a personal level, Hitler, when he lived in Vienna before World War I, it was at a time when Vienna was the most multi-ethnic capital in Europe. Hitler was living amongst Jews at the same time as experiencing the fierce anti-Semitism that prevailed in Vienna then. He heard the arguments that so many foreign elements were weakening German culture and German control of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which of course was lost after World War I. As for the policies that the Nazis introduced and how they affected the Jews and other minorities, well, I think you can divide them into three stages. They first prepared the population with propaganda, then set about removing the different groups from society, before eventually trying to exterminate them. Now you have looked at Nazi propaganda, posters that depicted Jews as shifty, untrustworthy, and evil, Also, and this is important, as less than human, because that made it easier to get rid of them. And this was shown in films too, like The Eternal Jew. And don't forget the way children were taught to be anti-Semitic, both in the school curriculum and the Hitler Youth movement. Removing Jews from society began with the boycott of shops and Jewish professions like doctors. Jews were forbidden to work in the civil service, to be teachers, to serve in the army. Children were expelled from schools, barred from playgrounds. Sexual relations with Jews was made a crime. The Nuremberg laws removed all rights from Jews, and they were no longer German citizens. Jews were evicted from their homes and forced into designated accommodation, eventually into ghettos. All Jews 6 years of age or older were to wear a yellow Star of David. Jews were now set apart from German society. Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, followed the murder of a German diplomat in Paris by a Jew. It was the Nazis' revenge, a pogrom in which Jewish homes, businesses and synagogues across Germany were smashed and looted. The Nazis claimed it was a spontaneous reaction to the murder, though in fact it was a planned and systematic pogrom. And Germans knew it. Up to Kristallnacht, the Nazis' actions had been economically based, for example boycotts, socially based, for example exclusions, or politically based, for example the removal of rights. But the murder of von Rath, the diplomat, was the excuse to elevate the persecution of Jews to a physical attack. The pogrom was ferocious in its nature, designed to strike fear amongst the Jewish community, sending the message that they were no longer welcome in Germany. It was also an opportunity to unleash the SA and the SS on the Jewish community. And though it wasn't particularly successful, it was an attempt to further radicalize German youth against the Jews. They had now experienced 5 years of Nazi indoctrination, and to the population at large. Now I'll look at the last stage in Nazi anti-Semitic policies, the Holocaust, in a separate presentation. This one is done. I'll simply thank you for listening and ask you to think long and hard at what was done to the Jewish community, not just in Nazi Germany and not just in the 1930s, but across Europe for many centuries and still today. Good luck with your studies. Cheers.